The greatest comeback in the history of professional tennis was supposed to be a massive celebration for the sport, but the reality is a completely calculated nightmare manufactured by the corrupt executives running the women's tour. At 44 years old, Serena Williams stepped back onto the grass courts, and WTA CEO Steve Simon immediately went into total meltdown mode. Corporate suits, sitting at the very top of the ladder, found themselves absolutely terrified of what this specific return would mean for their fragile control system. For almost 4 years, these executives believed they were finally completely free of the most dominant force the sport has ever seen. Following her emotional farewell at the 2022 US Open, the leadership tried to build a totally new era they could fully micromanage from their offices. But here's the thing about false control. Documents prove the executive branch immediately scrambled to downplay her impact the second she announced her return at the Queen's Club. To protect their manufactured brand and keep all the financial leverage, the executive branch desperately needed her to fail quietly behind closed doors, completely out of the public eye. Media manipulation started instantly. Corporate leaders wanted the global press to run endless attack pieces questioning if a mother of two should even be competing at her age. They aggressively ceded talking points to their broadcast partners, instructing them to paint her return as a massive mistake fueled by ego rather than genuine sporting ambition. The executives genuinely hoped the brutal reality of professional sports would humiliate her on the world stage and force a permanent retreat. What nobody expected was that Serena Williams has spent her entire life breaking restrictive rules, and she refused to let a group of boardroom executives dictate the end of her story. She walked out onto the slick grass courts in London with 19-year-old rising star Victoria Mboko, completely ignoring the whispering critics trying to tear her down. Steve Simon and his executive team watched from the luxury suites, waiting for a massive public relations disaster to unfold right in front of them. The suits wanted the legendary champion to look slow, out of breath, and totally out of her depth against the modern generation of players. They needed a terrible performance to justify their manufactured narrative that a player of her age had absolutely no business competing on the professional tour. Tour officials even strategically placed allied media members in the front rows, ordering them to ask the most insulting questions possible during the post-match press conference. The goal involved forcing her into a defensive posture to make her justify her mere existence on a tennis court, but that strategy instantly collapsed. The reality is that Serena and Mboko did not just compete during their opening appearance on the grass. They went out there and completely dominated their first-round match against the heavily favored number 3 seeds, silencing the entire stadium. Nearly 1,400 days had passed since her last competitive match, yet her legendary serve looked absolutely untouched by the passage of time. Firing aces at 120 miles per hour completely silenced the doubting executives sitting above the court in their private boxes. The massive crowd inside the Andy Murray Arena went completely wild as the champion, holding 23 Grand Slam titles, dictated the pace of play like she never even left. The executives in the luxury suites looked on in absolute panic as their master plan to marginalize her completely evaporated in real time. Broadcast numbers started going through the roof, proving the superstar acts as a walking economy the tour simply cannot control. The leadership realized they could not stop her momentum on the scoreboard, which meant they resorted to a far more dangerous tactic. Their systemic failures regarding player safety were about to cause an absolute catastrophe on the grass. And this is where it gets worse. Victoria Mboko was scheduled to play a massive singles match against Karolina Pliskova, and the conditions she faced were completely unacceptable for professional competition. The maintenance logs clearly show the surface had not been properly acclimated for the extreme humidity and aggressive footwork required by modern athletes. Tour officials knew the highly dangerous footing threatened everyone, yet they completely refused to delay the schedule or protect the athletes in any meaningful way. The problem was they sent a Canadian teenager out onto a hazardous surface because the corporate broadcasting schedule mattered way more than human joints. The organization heavily prioritizes television media rights fees over the basic physical safety of the players who actually generate their revenue and keep the lights on. Executives knew. The court operated as a massive trap, but they let the match proceed anyway, because they desperately needed to derail the doubles run. They willingly sacrificed a young player's entire season just to stop the massive momentum building behind the greatest player of all time. During the intensely contested match against Pliskova, the exact disaster everyone feared finally took place. Right on the baseline, Mboko went to change direction to chase down a ball, and her left foot completely gave way on the greasy, neglected grass. The footage remains absolutely sickening to watch as her knee buckled violently underneath, her entire body weight leaving her completely helpless on the ground. She collapsed to the turf in absolute agony, clutching her leg while the umpire desperately called for the tournament medical staff to intervene. This event did not represent a freak accident or a simple case of bad luck on the court. The reality dictates that this was a massive procedural failure caused by an organization blatantly refusing to mandate strict court testing protocols. The corporate executives immediately went into total damage control mode, trying to aggressively spin the horrific injury as an unavoidable tragedy of professional sports. The player locker room already knew the dark truth, and the massive anger towards Steve Simon's failing administration began to boil over. Completely, the official medical reports quickly confirmed the absolute worst case scenario for the young prodigy whose career was just starting to take off. Mboko suffered a devastating knee injury, forcing her to withdraw from the entire grass court season immediately. She was officially ruled out of Wimbledon and forced to pull out of the doubles event with Serena right on the spot. The partnership ended in the most heartbreaking way possible, crushing the young star's massive dream of playing at the All England club alongside her absolute idol. The corporate office silently celebrated the tragic news because it gave them the exact exit ramp they so desperately wanted to utilize. With Mboko officially out of the tournament, the massive comeback at the Queen's Club concluded legally after just one single match. Tour executives instantly instructed their media partners to start pumping out articles, claiming the comeback had completely fallen apart forever. They aggressively pushed the false narrative that the return was dead in the water and the superstar should just give up immediately. The leadership thought they successfully escaped the massive threat of an independent superstar dominating their tightly controlled environment. They believed the legend would see the horrible luck, pack her massive bags, and quietly return to a permanent retirement in Florida. The suits incorrectly assumed a mother of two would avoid the exhausting chaos of finding a new partner. This whole situation functioned as a calculated and absolutely disgusting attempt to use a tragic injury to force a living legend out of the sport. But Steve Simon made the absolute biggest mistake of his entire career by completely underestimating the sheer resilience fueling the champion. She saw right through the pathetic corporate spin and the highly weaponized media coverage designed to totally ruin her reputation. The establishment deliberately tried framing her historic return as a short-lived mistake, proving she was just too old to compete. Instead of retreating into the shadows, the champion decided to fiercely weaponize the tour's very own rulebook right against the corrupt executives. The official player code strictly outlines clear guidelines for late tournament entries, major wildcards, and crucial player safety protocols. Internal documents strongly prove the tour continuously violates its own safety mandate whenever it suits their specific corporate agenda. Leaked financial records also show that organization loses a massive amount of leverage when an elite player operates completely outside their marketing machine. The tour relies heavily on young, compliant players whom they can easily lock into highly restrictive promotional contracts for absolute pennies on the dollar. None of that mattered because Serena acts as a completely independent global economy to absolutely nobody but herself and her family. When she fully controls the public narrative, the entire corporate structure looks completely powerless, pathetic, and totally obsolete. Tour leaders thought the devastating news about the Wimbledon withdrawal would completely break the fierce resolve of the greatest player ever. They wanted the general public to deeply believe her golden era ended permanently, and she just desperately chased a ghost. Their highly coordinated media smear campaign ran face first into a massive brick wall of absolute defiance. That changed when Serena totally blindsided the entire professional tennis world by releasing a definitive public statement completely altering the summer calendar. She completely bypassed the internal communications team and announced her next brilliant move directly to her millions of loyal followers. The official confirmation stated she was not stopping, she was not quitting, and she was officially entering the doubles draw at the upcoming Berlin Open. The corrupt corporate suites went into an immediate state of total shock, massive panic, and utter disarray. The tour just spent days aggressively trying to completely bury her comeback story, and now she fiercely forced them right back into the glaring global spotlight. The Berlin tournament was originally supposed to be a highly standard, tightly controlled, let-up event strictly managed by the tour. Serena instantly turned the German tournament into the absolute most highly anticipated sporting event of the entire summer schedule. Corrupt executives suddenly realized their pathetic, calculated attempts to deeply isolate and strongly discourage her completely and spectacularly failed. Now the entire professional tennis industry rapidly distances itself from Steve Simon's completely failing and absolutely disastrous administration. Major corporate sponsors are closely looking at the highly unsafe court conditions at Queens that totally ruined a teenager's season, and they demand clear answers. They are absolutely furious about the massive legal liability issues heavily caused by the blatant and totally dangerous negligence of a tour. Television network executives also remain completely furious. Their massive administrative incompetence almost permanently cost them the absolute highest-rated television asset in sports history. The powerful billionaire backers deeply funding these massive grass court events start to clearly realize the current leadership operates as a massive financial liability. The undeniable reality reveals the organization currently faces an unprecedented massive internal mutiny from angry players, massive sponsors, and loyal global fans alike. They foolishly try to artificially build a restrictive corporate system where the manufactured brand somehow exceeds the legendary players who brilliantly built it. But Serena just definitively proved to the entire world true sporting greatness can never be fully institutionalized or deeply controlled by greedy men in cheap suits. Every single calculated malicious trap they desperately set for her only strongly served to heavily highlight her incredible unmatched drawing power and massive star quality. The weak suits desperately wanted her to look completely obsolete, totally slow, and heavily washed up in front of the global cameras. They completely failed, and the only result involved making themselves look completely irrelevant, totally weak, and incredibly pathetic on the massive global stage. As the champion fiercely prepares to completely dominate the pristine courts in Berlin, the absolute panic inside the corporate office reaches totally unprecedented levels. They sit left holding a totally broken, completely useless narrative and a massive growing mountain of brutal public backlash. The executives desperately scramble to rapidly rewrite their totally broken safety regulations, while their absolute biggest corporate sponsors openly and fiercely question their basic administrative competence. Their massive, highly controlling empire completely falls apart right now because they foolishly dared to aggressively cross the absolutely greatest champion the world has ever definitively seen. Serena proudly stands tall, fiercely fights on, and brilliantly drives the entire sport strictly forward purely on her own legendary terms. She possesses absolutely nothing left to prove to a pathetic group of highly manipulative men sitting in a cold, tightly locked air-conditioned boardroom. Her massive, undeniable legacy remains permanently written in pure gold, and those 23 historic Grand Slam titles act as an incredibly impenetrable shield. No corrupt corporate suit can ever deeply dent the massive legendary impact she permanently made on the rich history of global sports. She will fiercely play, whenever she wants, loudly with whomever she deeply wants, and the fully corrupt establishment will just have to quietly sit there and helplessly watch her spectacularly win. Steve Simon thought they would destroy Serena Williams, but they only destroy themselves.